I was called to diagnose this vehicle. This is having an issue. So you can see rear oil pressure is at 10 bar, and anytime you start the vehicle, it goes to limp mode. Let me read the fault code. So this is the fault code available. So what I'm going to do is, I can see sensor voltage 5 supply issue. So my main focus is on the oil pressure signal, and for sensing it's used 3 wires, and every sensor that uses 3 wire has to have ground, signal and power. So I'm going to measure voltage. So I've traced from the oil pressure sensor to this point, and I have the brown, the gray and one white and one red and white. So if you can see, I'm having 5 volt, and any 5 volt, to test for signal wire, you connect this test light to incandescent test light. You connect one side to battery negative, and you test it, because this test light rate is from 0 to 12 volt. So I'll test it, and it should be able to turn on. So you can see this is my power line. So if I test it, it should be able to turn on. So you can see it's not turning on, and you can see my 5 volt line is off. Let me turn off the channel 2. Okay, so you can see my test light just went off. So if you can see, when I release it, it goes back to 5 volts. So that means it could be a signal line. So for me to verify that that's the signal line, now what I'm going to do, because I'm not having access to a wiring diagram, so that I can know that, oh, brown is ground and red is signal, so I have to do this testing, manual testing, so that I could be able to identify the ground and the power in it, and see if I can tell the client that, oh, it is a sensor issue or it's a signal. But moreover, they've changed 2 sensors already. That's why they called me. So what I'll do is, let me go to live data, and live data. Okay, so you go to engine environment, select oil rail. So you can see the rail pressure. So if there's a signal line, 5 volt signal line, it should drop to, let's say, a 0 volt. So if you can see, it drops. So that tells me that line is, so that means this gray line is the signal line. So now I have to test for power and see if I'll have my power line. So if you can see, I'm now on the brown line, and me being on the brown line, I've already tested continuity from the sensor to this side, and this brown line is also giving me 5 volts. So if the brown line is also giving me 5 volts, then that means I have to test and see if it will be able to turn on this my test light. So it's able to turn on my test light, and you can see the voltage is not dropping that much. My test lights can be turned on with 5 volts. So that tells me that is a power line. So I have to check the other power line, and you can see the rail pressure, the rail engine oil pressure is still at 10 bar, and if I test it, it doesn't affect it anyway. So let me test the last one. And I'll know how to conclude. So now I have 1 power, 1 signal line, so I'm searching for the ground. So if I test the other one and it is not ground and it is also power, then that means the 2 wires that are supplying power, one has to be ground. So I have to, because I don't have the wiring diagram, I have to cut one and hope that will be my ground. So let me do that and bring you guys back. So if you can see, this is my red and white wire. That's the last one, and it's also 5 volts for mine. So if we test, so now let me test and see. Okay, so if you can see, that is the ground line, because now that I've connected to it and I'm getting 5 volts, I'm testing to see if it can turn my signal. I'm testing to see if it can turn or if that's the signal line, sorry, that's the ground, because now I've gotten power, ground, and I have signal, power. Now I'm searching for ground, so let me use this, because this test light also carries ground at the tip, so when it means voltage, it will turn on. So if you can see, now it has come to ground. That means that's my ground line. So that means that wire is a ground wire, which is not meeting 8 points, which is not meeting the ground that it has been connected to. And because I don't have the wiring diagram, so I don't know where exactly to go to, or where exactly to trace that line. So what I'm going to do is, let me do this testing, and I'll leave it to the shop to do their work. So if you can see, when I use this test light to connect to it, you can see it short it to ground, and you can see it affects the pressure here. So now my oil pressure has changed. Do you get it? So now my oil pressure has changed, and now I'm supplying ground through this wire, and it looks like the wire is not going to where the ground is. That's why it's causing the issue. Now to my scope, it is on ground, it is grounded, and to my pressure line, it is perfect. So now what I'll do is, let me try and erase the fault code first before I'll let them start it, and let's see if it's going to work. We are hoping it works. You can see now it's permanent. So let me clean the fault code and let them cycle the ignition and see if it is going to work. And if it works, if the pressure starts to change, then that means my theory is working perfect. So let me read it again. Still oil pressure signal. So let me go back and see it, if it will read. Select engine environment, raw pressure, and click on OK. Okay, so now my raw oil pressure is at, start the car, give me. So now I have to start the car and see if it is going to work perfectly. Now that my scope is on 0, so let me see if there will be any change in the oil pressure that I'm seeing. Start them. So you can see there is change in the oil pressure. And still at 0, and the pressure is not high, so you can see the oil pressure starts to increase. So what I'll do is, I'll let it run for a while. It's permanent because maybe this vehicle, it needs the vehicle to run for some cycles so that it will be able to correct the pressure. So what I'll do is, I'll let them ref it a bit and see if the pressure that I'm seeing now is going to work. Ref them small. Make it not do a mobile board. So now what I'll do is, I'll let them ref it small to see if the pressure is going to change. You can see the pressure is changing. The oil pressure is changing. Yeah, it'll be okay. So that tells me that now my problem is fixed, and the main problem is it's lacking ground. So if I say I'm going to trace where the ground is because I don't have service information, turn them off, then turn the key on. So now you can see my oil pressure is perfect. So that means I'm done diagnosing, and my main issue is the system is lacking ground. That's why we are having those issues. So if you use multimeter, you see it as a voltage. Then if you have scope, multimeter can also draw it to 0 and it will show to you. So I'll let the guys do their tracing and trace the wire and see where the ground is. Then they will figure it out. So now this tells me that my work is done perfectly, or I'm done with my diagnosing. So it being permanent here doesn't mean, so you can see it's writing intermittent. So that means I have to let them find the ground. It could be that maybe because now the oil pressure is working, so you can see it's giving us another issue with the crank signal. So all I have to do is to let the guys do their diagnosing and trace the wire and see where they could get the ground. So now my oil pressure is reading perfectly. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel for more videos. So anytime I disconnect it, it goes to 10 bar, and when I reconnect it, it goes to the original engine pressure. So I'll let them do their diagnosing and find where the ground is. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel for more videos. So after the diagnosis, now we find out that the wire is connected to this side, and instead of the control board to feed it with ground, so we've connected ground on our multimeter to check if the control board is able to feed it with ground. You can see we are getting voltage rather instead of ground. So that tells us that the control board is not able to bring the ground that the sensor needs. So if we give it ground, it will work, but if we don't give it ground, then that means we still have the voltage from the sensor. So this voltage is from the sensor, and the control board is not feeding it with ground. But the moment I jump ground to it, this will go to 0, and the car, the pressure, the fuel, the engine pressure will start working perfectly. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel for more videos. So I'll tell the client to get us a new control board, then we'll see what we'll do.
You to sit down, so I'll tell the client to.
I'll tell the. So now I'm coming to scan it and see. Now there is no fault code in the system. That tells me that now, because I've jumped the ground over here, so now there is no fault code in the system. So what we'll do is start the car. We'll start it and check our raw pressure. So now you can see it's at 0 bar, 0.9 bar. It's having this issue again. So it's having issue with starting. So we'll work on it and we'll bring you guys back. You can see now everything is working perfect. That tells us that the vehicle is running now. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel for more videos. So if you can see, when I go back to fault code, I shouldn't have any fault related to oil pressure. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel for more videos.